so today on Paradelphia, we have a guest who is coming back for, I believe, the fourth or fifth time. He is our most frequent guest here on the show. You've seen his previous books. Usually they start out with the title of Spirits Speak, and he goes on to describe what spirits are speaking in this incarnation of the book. This time it is Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits. Mr. Barry Strohm. Barry, welcome back.
Hey, an honor to be back. Thanks so much, Rick.
Absolutely. So this is turning into quite the prolific career for you. These books.
Yes, it's far beyond anything I ever imagined. This is the seventh book.
Oh wow, seventh one. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's right. The first couple, I don't think I knew you for the very first couple you did.
No, I published the first one in '69, and that was the one about the Battle of Gettysburg.
In 1969?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow. I guess I wouldn't have known you.
I'm sorry. I was 69.
Oh, you were 69.
Yeah.
I guess that was 2 years before I was born.
Just go with what I think, not with what I say. Okay. when at least I'm old. I have an excuse.
Yeah, I'm getting there. So anyway, this book, Spirit Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits. How is this one? And I know you did one on talking directly to Jesus himself.
Mm-hmm.
How is this one a little bit different than that?
Well, the first book was Spirit Speak, Channeling the Life of Jesus.
Okay.
And in that one, we channeled individuals that were with him, his mother, his wife, which everybody probably just shuddered when I said that. but in that one, he tells us the truth about his life. And once you understand the truth of his life, it's an incredibly believable story. Mm-hmm. Everything, a lot of stuff in the Gospels is so exaggerated. And then some of it's actually understated. Because when we started channeling with him, we found that he actually created more miracles than are recorded in the Gospels.
Really? Yeah, it seems like it's one of those things, and I guess this makes all the sense in the world. It's like the telephone game over 2,000 years. Mm-hmm. You know, you're going to get people that are going to change and lessen and increase the story as they see fit.
Oh yeah, no, I mean the Gospels. I mean, Constantine doesn't even attempt, when he attempts to put the Gospels together, it's over 300 years past the death of Jesus. You know, one of the big things that he had to worry about at the time, Christians didn't even know when to celebrate his death. Yeah. One group would celebrate it one time, another group would celebrate it another.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, in 300 years. I mean, keep in mind, the time of his death to the time that they start to really organize things is 300 years. Mm-hmm. Our country hasn't been around for 300 years.
Right.
And, they weren't exactly, they didn't have a stenographer writing all his words down. Right. Everything was hearsay. So it's,
Yeah, we'll get to Constantine later. That was definitely one of the more interesting chapters, I thought, in the book. So we'll touch on him in a little bit here.
Okay.
When you start out the book, though, you touch on a subject that's familiar from other books you've written and definitely familiar to people who listen to this show, and that's reincarnation.
Yes.
And you don't get too deep into it in this book, but you do brush by it in the beginning of the book, and you mentioned something interesting about how it's viewed, how it was viewed or is viewed by Jesus himself. What did he tell you about reincarnation and how he sees it?
Well, he spoke of reincarnation to his closest disciples. I mean, keep in mind, when Jesus walks the earth, he is teaching to the poor and the uneducated. So the concept of reincarnation to the average person that he was speaking to, it would have gone over their heads. And I mean, the teachings of Jesus when he spoke were radical enough.
Right.
So there were certain things that he did not bring up, but that he did talk to his disciples about and tried to explain. But even the disciples had problems believing and understanding some of the things that he spoke. Yeah.
And as far as the purpose of it, it's one of those things where I hear, and this might sound like a sarcastic kind of question, but it's really not meant to be sarcastic. It really is a thought that ran through my head reading the book. Like you've heard many times, right? Everybody's heard many times. The purpose of reincarnation is to eventually work your way up the ladder and become closer and closer to God.
Yes.
But well, okay. That aside, let's put that aside.
Mm-hmm.
God Himself made everything, which includes us. So why would it then be a situation where He would have made us need to go through that? Why not just create us closer to the top of the ladder, so to speak? Because to me, it almost sounds like a child playing with a toy, like an action figure, where you're playing with a figure and you're making him go up different levels, or a video game, if you want to use that analogy. Why do you have any idea why that was? Why we're so low in the ladder to start with?
Because He went through all of that.
God did?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, keep in mind, I mean, this is going to shake some people, but each galaxy has a God.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that from the last
Mm-hmm.
interview. Yeah. Okay.
And His soul had to go through all the transition. Now, I mean, you open the subject that's going to really move back in things.
That's why
keep in mind, there was a universe that existed before this universe.
Okay.
Okay. So His soul energy, His soul energy went so far back into that beginning universe, and then the gods get together and decide that they can't achieve what they want to achieve, which is evolution, where all souls get together and understand and cooperate. I mean, there's planets, and I wrote about this in some of the earlier books as well. I mean, there's planets where everybody gets along, but human souls, every soul can advance or it can regress through living a lifetime. The heaven that we have has 7 realms in it. So the idea is that a soul reincarnates, learns, and advances in the realms. But your soul can come over here, and because He gave us free will and egos, you can screw 100 lifetimes up by doing bad things in a lifetime. One of the examples, tonight we're going to, on our radio show, Channeling History, we're going to interview John Wilkes Booth. Well, obviously what he did in his lifetime wasn't a good thing. So he's back down in a lower level.
Okay.
And this is going to sound strange, but the guides are actually making a special exception to let him come up to speak to us.
Oh, really?
Generally, we can't channel people in lower levels.
That bad, huh?
Yeah. So it's going to be really interesting, because we're going to be specifically asking him some questions about what it's like down in some of these lower levels tonight.
Yeah. Hey, get some inside scoop.
But each soul, you have you got free will here, you got free will on the other side.
Okay.
Up to a certain extent. I mean, when you're in a level in heaven, you can visit levels that are lower than you, but you cannot visit levels that are above you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. There's I think it might be a line from the Bible. I believe it's a line from the Bible. So above, so below, or something like that. Mm-hmm. You've heard that before.
Yeah.
And it's always interested me when I hear these descriptions of the afterlife, or heaven, or God, or whatever it may be, and how it sounds so much like the human version of, take a choice, a school or the military, or, where you basically have a mentor and you work your way up the ladder and you get to the next level, or, it's like a corporation almost, where you eventually, you get promoted to the next level and so forth. And I always wonder if that's not just like some kind of inherent memory in people that they took from there and incorporated in various aspects down here, because it's what they know how to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, because your prior lives really have put a bit of an effect on your current life. Yeah. Sometimes you don't realize it sometimes, but it does.
Yeah.
So I mean, in my prior life, I fought at Gettysburg because I wanted to have that military experience. So I had a relatively short life, came back, fought at Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
So you lay out all of the things that you have to learn. Now I'm told that my future two or three lifetimes are already planned out for me.
Oh, okay.
Because apparently I'm going to have to come back and advance what I'm trying to do in this lifetime.
Okay.
So it's.
Do you know what that looks like, or have you got any details?
No. All they've done is told me it's laid out. I have no idea how it's going to happen.
Okay.
I mean, the last thing that I ever expected was to be writing books. I'm terrible in English spelling. I could have never written a book if it wasn't for spell check.
I'm right there with you.
In college, I avoided every literature course, writing course. I just wanted to get rid of it because I can't write.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they introduced me to my writing guides, and I'm writing books. I mean, this is anybody that knows me, the fact that I'm writing books is they are astounded by it, especially anyone that knew me in school.
Hey, you pick stuff up. You never know how it's going to go. That's the interesting thing.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of stuff in this book I found very interesting. And I'm not going to go over every aspect of it because it's too much for an hour's podcast, and it's also I want people to read the book for themselves, obviously. Mm-hmm. But a couple of the main most interesting chapters I found. One was about the chapter about Moses.
Yes.
That was toward the beginning of the book, and he was an interesting read, or that was an interesting read because he, as much as he is in this epic figure in Christianity, he actually had a physical handicap.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know this till I literally read it in the book the other day. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that's something I don't think I've ever heard, and most people probably haven't.
No, he had a speech impediment. He stuttered. Okay. And actually he used his brother to speak for him. And that's why a lot of the people that were around him thought he was an arrogant, standoffish person, that he wouldn't talk to the masses. But no, he fought a stutter and a speech defect all his life.
So he basically the mouthpiece of God, so to speak, had a stutter.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but it's, if you think about it, he's given obstacles to overcome.
Right.
Many obstacles.
Right.
So if he can't overcome that, how's he going to lead the Israelites out?
Right.
So then everything ties together in some weird way when you step back and look at it.
Yeah, and he had a lot of interesting things to say about the that whole story, because that is one of the more fantastical sounding stories, in the Bible.
That's correct.
And the whole thing from them wandering for 40 years to departing in the Red Sea, like all of it is just so over the top. But he kind of said, well, it happened, but not quite the way you heard it.
Not quite the way you heard it. No, right. He makes it all believable.
Yeah,
I mean, we've channeled him several times, and we channeled him. We did a show on our Channeling History show.
Yeah.
He came. We had him as one of the early guests on there, and he talked about it as well.
Yeah.
But no, by the time you're done reading the chapter, you'll believe that he did it.
Yeah, and there's not that there's necessarily science behind what's in the book, but you can see where a little bit of digging might find a scientific base for what happened. It kind of goes in that direction. In other words, he didn't say, well, the entire Red Sea just parted.
No,
it might not have even been the Red Sea as we know it.
It was not the Red Sea.
Yeah, so it was a smaller body of water, and it wasn't like you see in the Cecil B. DeMille film where there's a tower of water on each side. Like it wasn't that.
No. And you use common sense.
Yeah.
What really makes it difficult? The Red Sea is 100 miles wide.
Right.
And how deep? And you can imagine bringing 10,000 people down through the bottom, through the mud, and traveling 100 miles with the water.
Right, but if there was a body of water that had, due to other geological happenings at the time, had water drain out of its base, and then refill back in its base, that becomes a little bit more believable. I mean, you see that when you have tsunamis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and when the way he explained it, see, God uses natural occurrences.
Okay.
So the all of the plague and everything was a result of a volcanic eruption in Italy.
Yeah.
And Egypt is downwind, and the cloud comes and it kills the crops, and all these things happen.
Yeah.
Which the primitive people think of as different types of plagues.
Right.
But really, you can tie the whole thing together.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I kind of like I've always been a big how and why person. When I do this show, I hear some crazy stuff. But if you can tell me something crazy and then say, but here's how it happened, and the how sounds plausible. All right. I mean, I don't know that you're definitely right, but at least I'm on board with it. If you just say crazy stuff happened and it just because it did, well, come on.
No, that's what we do in these in all of the books. I try to make things believable.
Right.
I want people to know Jesus lives. He was a normal person for 28 years. In 3 years of his ministries,
right,
he does these things. But you got to understand how all this stuff takes place. That the why, and the wherefore, how things happen.
Yeah, and
he explains it in these books.
Now when you're talking to Moses, he mentioned something else I thought was interesting. This idea of manna, that the word manna from God has been something that's been kicked around forever, and nobody really knows what it is. I've heard everything from its actual food to it's some kind of like alien food source. Nobody really has a handle on what it is, but he kind of explains that a little bit.
Yeah, it's really simple. God and the angels lead him to water sources. When you get to a water source, you find animals, you find plants. So by leading them to these oases or water sources in the desert, God provides food, water to them. That's the manna.
So the oasis was basically the manna. Yeah. It wasn't some crazy weird food source that.
No, things didn't just drop out of heaven.
Yeah, right.
He led them to places in the desert where they could find food sources.
Right.
And that's the manna from heaven.
Right. Now, one of the other interesting figures you talk about, and you touched on this at the very beginning, where you said, the marriage of Jesus and whatnot, was this idea that the role that Mary Magdalene played. Yeah. Nobody really is sure what exactly her role was in the whole.
Mary Magdalene plays a huge role in his
marriage. Much larger than a lot of people are willing to give her credit for.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, keep in mind, Mary Magdalene is worshipped until the 11th century. It's only then that they decided they're going to change the story about her.
Yeah.
But she was a key disciple. Mary Magdalene had epilepsy. And she came from a wealthy family. And generally in those times, if you had epilepsy or something, they would do away with the baby.
Push her to the side of the road, yeah.
Yeah, but because she came from a wealthy family, they took care of her. And she's having a fit by the side of the road when Jesus comes by, and he heals her of the epilepsy. So she becomes one of the most fervent disciples. What they don't talk about, there's actually 5 very strong women followers or disciples of Jesus. But because they wanted to take the power of women out of the Gospels, the church did.
Right.
Those names are gone from history. People don't even remember who they are.
And the ones that are there are lessened. The impact is lessened. Yeah.
Exactly. But what Mary does, once he heals her, she helps fund his ministries. I mean, it wasn't just 12 guys wandering around. I mean, it was a big group. There was like 50 of them. Which
I thought was interesting because that is whether it was Mary Magdalene or anybody else, that's something that you don't hear talked about very often is, everybody says, well, Jesus had these ministries and he traveled around and he did all these things. But whether you're talking about 2,000 years ago or 2 years ago or 20 minutes ago, you need funds to do that. You have to live somehow. You have to get food and supplies.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Was the person for that.
some of them brought their wives and children with them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a big group of people traveling around.
Yeah, and she was the
And it was
money
her,
man, so to speak.
her wealthy family was so happy that he said that he cured her, that they helped fund
Yeah.
his ministries.
Now, an interesting question I thought of as I was reading that. Nowadays if you have a situation like that where you're traveling around with a group of people and somebody is the money man or funder or whatever you want to call it, you can stop at a Mac machine and you can get funds out and you can write a check and you can do these things. You couldn't do that back then. So do you know how she accessed her family's funds while they were traveling around like that? Do you have any idea how that happened?
They would use hard currency.
Okay.
I mean, bear in mind, I'm a big collector of biblical coins and things.
Okay.
But they actually had different money forms. For instance, Herod had used a form of money called the pruta, P-R-U-T-A-H.
Mm-hmm.
So he had coins that were minted that were 1, 2, 4, or 8 pruta.
Mm-hmm.
So just like we have different denominations in our money, they had hardcore money. So they would use the coin, the bronze coins of the realm.
So so they literally carried this cash with them, or
Mm-hmm.
Because what I was thinking is, I mean, wouldn't that set them up to be robbed if you're carrying all this money? Like, isn't that a big target on your back?
Absolutely, but that is why they had this larger group.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is a group of 50 people trucking around, and they don't know who's got the money, and they're looking for volunteers also. I mean, every night they had to find somewhere for these people to sleep.
Yeah.
So they would have people would volunteer space for them to sleep. They would, other people that were listening would help feed them. This was a fairly big operation for the time.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if maybe they traded on her family's name, if her family's name was well known enough that maybe they could have said, well, I'm so and so, I'm Mary Magdalene. My dad is. You mentioned her dad's name in the book. I forget what his name is, but I didn't know if maybe that was a situation where they would do something like that and trade on the name and just say, okay, he'll get you that money and we're good for it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they did everything they could.
Yeah,
I mean, logistically, it was difficult for them.
I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely, I'm sure. So Mary is the one who Jesus appears to after the resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just my thought process, and maybe it's just I've thought about this wrong my entire life. But reading this book, I kind of had this little revelation. When I have heard this story before, I always made the assumption that when Jesus came back and appeared, he came back in the flesh, and it was a flesh and blood person who came back.
Mm-hmm.
But reading the book, it sounds to me like it was an apparition. So which is true? Was it an apparition, or was it actually a flesh and blood person?
No, it was a flash of. He actually returned. That's the miracle of the resurrection.
Okay.
He actually returns as a solid figure because he allows Thomas to actually touch his wounds.
Okay. Because the way I read that in the book, it almost sounded like, and I heard the Holy Ghost, that figure of speech, and I thought, well, geez, maybe that's what that's referring to, is that the Holy Ghost is Jesus after the resurrection, and it was an apparition, like you see apparitions now, but maybe it was more.
Well, he appears different ways.
Okay.
See, he is actually appearing through this period of time, so they might see him in spirit form, and in the case of Thomas, because he honestly was the one that doubted. Okay. He appears in solid form to show him the wounds.
Okay. And you actually have a chapter in the book where you talk about conversations with Jesus directly. You wrote that whole book last time about that conversation or those conversations, but you do bring that up in this book here, and it's a timely conversation because he touches on what's going on in the world now as far as the COVID pandemic.
Correct.
What does he say about that?
What he's saying is that there have been many times in the past the humans had to face this type of illness. That they are much better able to face it now because of the medical sciences and advances.
Okay.
But I mean, there were times in history where the Black Death and things, I mean, it wipes out like half the population.
Right.
So you have to understand and take things in scale. So yes, it is bad. It will be solved just like other ones were solved one way or another.
Right.
But that it is something that occurs, and it's going to occur in the future just as it has occurred in the past.
So this was intentional then? Was there a purpose behind this from his point of view?
No, this was actually the works of man did this one.
Okay.
It's because he told us long before it was advertised that it came out of a lab in China. So we knew where this thing came from, and I actually had posted it in different statements that we made.
Okay.
But everything he told us was verified. But this is an act of free will.
Okay. All right. But any idea of the length of time before this is going to blow over, or he didn't get into that specific?
In recent channelings, that they're going to be coming up with a virus, but they are also telling us that there's going to be mutations of the virus.
Yeah, well, that
So
makes sense.
it's going to be more far-reaching than we understand right now.
Yeah, so it's going to be a while before they get the whole thing under control.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And at the end of this book here, you have a couple of interesting chapters. One I found really compelling here was about Emperor Constantine.
Yes.
Who you don't hear mentioned very often in relation to holy spirits and things like that, but he actually had a lot to do with the way that we nowadays look at religion.
Oh yeah, he was huge. Constantine actually is the first Christian Roman emperor. Mm-hmm. He's emperor from like 306 to 336, something like that. So he serves a long lifetime. But his parents were actually undercover Christians. So as he gains power, he allows Christianity to take place in the open.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as he allows this, it also creates dissension among the Christians. Because by 320 AD, they don't even know what the date of the crucifixion was.
Right.
So there's different groups are celebrating the resurrection on different dates.
Yeah. So
he calls a conference in Nicaea. And actually, the primary mission at that time was just to set one time that all the Christians would get together and do this. But he also lays the foundation for selection of the Gospels, mm-hmm. and the formation of the Roman Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he does an incredible amount to affect what we see today in Christianity.
One of the things, and we've referenced this a few times on the show about various topics, but the Council of Nicaea was something that, that really had a huge impact on the way the Bible, the way religion, Christianity specifically, is viewed today. Because he, as you just said, he picked and chose the books to include in what eventually became the Bible.
Yes.
Did he give reason for why he chose the books he chose and why he left out books like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Thomas and Book of Mary?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, there's over 300 Gospels presented.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were incomplete. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are basically telling the same story. And they're complete Gospels. So he figured that these were Gospels that would not create political dissension for him. Because one thing Constantine is worried about is his own butt. I mean,
right.
He doesn't want the Christians turning against him because he's given them freedoms. And in his mind, he's thinking, I'm giving them freedom, but what happens if they do this?
Yeah.
So he selects Gospels that are easily understood and are basically saying the same thing, because he's trying to get rid of dissension.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like a lot of the more fringe topics, alien abductions and reincarnation and things like that a lot of stuff we talk about on this show, were left out on purpose.
Correct. Because he's worried about political dissension.
So he's worried about that sounding too over the top,
right?
People not believing him.
Yeah. Another example. He specifically does not believe revelations.
Okay.
So he specifically keeps revelations out of the early book. And it's not till like 100 years later that Revelations is added, because the church knows that they have to add fear.
Yeah.
See, Jesus never taught fear.
Yeah.
He taught love, but he never taught to fear God.
Yeah. And that's always been the issue I've had with organized religion was, there's a lot of good that's being taught, but it's couched in this idea that you must do this or else.
That's correct.
And you can't approach it like that and expect people to just be on board with it. You're basically ruling by, like you just said, ruling by fear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to work out well in the long run. You'll get your initial, you'll get some people will fall in line, but I don't know. It's just with me wrong. It always has.
Yeah. It's the concept of fear is something that was introduced. The whole concept of hell was introduced by the church. Jesus never spoke of hell.
Mm-hmm.
He always spoke, live a good life and you will join me in heaven. But hell was something that was originated.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the church. It wasn't something he spoke of.
Yeah. And then I'm sure the people that were in power over the years, used that and ran with it to keep themselves in power.
Oh, as soon as they started to realize how powerful fear was.
Yeah.
They don't even, the early gospels are not even in a language that the common person can read.
Mm.
They didn't want the common person to be reading all these outside gospels.
Yeah.
They wanted to control the message. And basically that's what they do. The one overriding thing in all of our channelings and what we do is we talk of the many paths to heaven. That there is no one path. Your soul is gone. Heaven's all around you, and your soul's going to wind up there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's your life that determines whether you move up or down, or what happens when you get there.
Right. Right.
But there's many paths. Just like we've on our show already, we've interviewed Buddha, for instance.
Yeah.
And he talks about his teachings, and we're going to be reaching out, just like when we do. Archangels are non-denominational, because angels are present basically in all religions.
Yeah, just called different things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, so it's really interesting when you get into all this stuff. Yeah,
it is. I've read a lot of stuff on, like, for example, in the Muslim world, they have the jinn, which are supposed to be these entities that live in a parallel world to us. And to me, that sounds an awful lot like these angels that people are talking about in Christianity.
Exactly.
So it's a matter of semantics. Like, what are you calling your angels where you live?
You have to, you step back and you look at it and you realize just how believable all this stuff can be.
Yeah. Yeah. When you start looking at it from a higher up, perspective and kind of tying it all together, you do see parallels.
Yeah, the whole purpose of the books that I'm working on now is to make Christianity or religion believable.
Yeah, yeah.
To understand that there's truly one universe, one galactic God that all of our religions rotate to.
Yeah. Talking about Constantine, there was one part of his story that I found pretty, in my opinion, kind of shady. So he talks about baptism and how he did not get baptized until at the very, very end of his life.
Yes.
Because he knew that he was going to be doing all kinds of shitty things, and he wanted to go into heaven with a clean slate.
Exactly.
Instead of getting baptized early on and then living a good life, he lived whatever life he wanted to live and kind of just took the eraser and went zip at the end of his life and cleansed himself.
Yeah, even though he's first Christian emperor, he's writing the rules.
Yeah, and that seems like he's gaming the system.
He tried to game. Yes, he knew that he would be doing things opposed to the teachings of God. As because that's what Roman emperors did in those days. So he waits until he's basically on his deathbed to be baptized, because he was firmly convinced that baptism cleansed the body of sins.
Right. Yeah, I read that and like, man, I guess if you're making the rules, you do what you want to do, I suppose.
Yeah, no, it's a great chapter. I mean, we've also done channeling with Pontius Pilate.
Okay.
And we've got his opinion. And we have a video up on my YouTube channel where we did that. And I will probably bring him up, channel him on a radio show at Easter time.
Okay.
But,
cool.
He's actually, what you have to understand is that there is a soul family of elevated souls over there that serve God. And he sends these souls back. So everybody that came back with him and was close to him remembers of his soul family. Mm-hmm. And they served him on other planets. They went back on other planets with him and did what they had to do. And when he decides to come back to Earth, he brings these souls back with life plans that he knows he can trust. And believe it or not, Pilate is a member of the soul family. And he was sent back to crucify Jesus.
Yeah. Well,
that sounds counterproductive, obviously, for the path of your soul.
Right.
But, we asked Jesus, why was he crucified? And he said, because people would remember it.
Yeah.
If he died of a heart attack, nobody would have remembered it.
Yeah. One of the things we've been told over the years is people traditionally reference soulmates as, a wife, a husband, somebody like that. But it could literally be a lot of different people. For one thing, you don't have one; you have many.
Oh yeah.
And some of those people could be your sworn enemy in life.
Correct.
Because that conflict drives your narrative.
Correct. You're not supposed to lead an easy life when you come back here.
Yeah.
You're supposed to. You will have sicknesses that you have to learn to suffer. You have grief, because obviously that you're going to bury your parents. Most of you're going to face a lot of people passing.
Right. And
in my case, when you get older, you start to see all your good friends are leaving you.
Right.
So everything is set up as a learning process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Mm-hmm. So personally, from your perspective, these channeling sessions that you do for this book or just in general, mm-hmm. how have these affected your life?
Oh, immensely. Because I had a civil engineering license. I had minor in statistics, business management degree, and I ran businesses. Mm-hmm. But we've totally pulled away from everything. And now that I'm home out in Utah, this is all I get time to do anymore. Is the writings, social media. We started this little radio show to spread the word. So yeah. I'm trying to bring channeled messages to as many people as I can.
Yeah.
Because I want them to understand the reality of life and just what really is possible.
Yeah. And that's really what it boils down to. It's interesting to hear these stories in the words of the people who live them, which is a completely unique experience.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. No, keep in mind, when I was 60 years old, I didn't believe in ghosts. So let's think about how far I've come with this. Right. They had the whole thing laid out, because I would have the antique gallery. I'd had ghosts everywhere to prove to me that they existed. Mm-hmm. I had a battlefield close by where I could go over and take pictures to see them. And then I'm introduced to people that teach me how to do board channeling. And then the guides lead me away from the board, that I can do all this stuff in my head now.
Yeah.
So no, everything was pre-programmed. I keep saying there's no coincidences.
Yeah. Oh, I believe that. I definitely believe that. So, looking at the future here, what's on the agenda? What do you have coming up for future projects, if any?
Well, our little radio show is called Channeling History, and it's on the Para X radio network. It's Sundays at 9:00. And tonight, for instance, we're going to do John Wilkes Booth, and we're going to do the Lincoln Conspiracy. So we will channel all that live, and we let people come in through the chat room and ask the questions of the spirit. So last week we did Archangel Azrael last week, and we let individuals actually ask questions of an angel and get answers. So I mean, how unique can you get with this? And we were jammed.
Right.
We always go in with prepared questions in case nobody, obviously, but we were so busy we only got through like a quarter of our prepared questions because everybody wanted to ask an angel a question, and he answered.
Yeah. Well, how often do you get to do that? You know?
Yeah, really, it was kind of unique. But I'm working. The book that I have out, Channeling Life of Jesus, just came out. Is the second book of the series, and the third one is going to be Channeling the Teachings of Jesus. And I'm about half finished with that. So, I have to write that, and I enjoy it, and I love talking to people like you on shows. So it's I'm busy. I think I'm more busy than I was working.
Yeah, and for anybody who's watching this, the book is on the screen here. Spirits Speak: Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits. Where can you get this book, and where can we see all of your works?
Well, all of the books are available on Amazon. And what we did on this one is I changed publishers because I wasn't happy with what was going on. So we've made this one available on Kindle. So you can go in and download it, very reasonable price, because we're just trying to get the book into people's hands. So it's not like the money side of this thing. So you can go in, download it. If you want a signed copy, the only place you're going to get that is through one of my websites. Spiritspredict.com is one of them. Go in, hit the book page, and you can buy a signed copy, which I'll send to you. Okay. But we're got a lot going on. We have a YouTube channel. It's in my name, Barry Strohm. We have about 115 videos up now, where you go in and actually watch us. We have all the radio shows are up on the YouTube channel, but you can also go in and see all of our previous channelings. And I have videos up that go back to the early days where we were relying on the channeling board. So you can go in and actually watch my progression as I advance.
Yeah, you can see the evolution.
Yeah. So there's a lot on the YouTube channel to see.
That's pretty cool. All right. Well, Barry, again, great having you here. Great having you on the show, and
appreciate it.
All the luck in the world with this book, and all your future endeavors. You are definitely doing something completely unique.
Yeah, you can say that.
I've never heard of anybody else doing what you do, and it's really, really interesting.
It's different. And I'm amazed at it myself. I mean, the fact that we can actually channel with Jesus. I mean, now people have to understand he is a galactic energy, so he's many places at many times. But every time he comes in, we can feel the energy. I mean, usually Connie and I have tears coming down our face when we're doing it with him. When Mary comes in, it's the same thing. And December 20th, we're going to channel Mary on our radio show for the special Christmas show. And she will actually tell you all the details on the radio show about his birth.
Okay, interesting. All right, that's a little teaser for something coming up in a couple weeks.
No, we got a lot going on.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll definitely we'll link to all the websites and does your show have a link to send people to, or is it just on the ParaX network?
Yeah, just ParaX radio network.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll link to all that. Your books, your author page, your main page. We'll put all that out there so people can find you. They'll be able to find you.
A lot of crap for an old man, I'll tell you.
All right, Barry. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on. It's been a great time. And again, best of luck with everything in the future. And the next time you guys write a book or, you just talking about the radio show, you're welcome back anytime.
Well, love being on your show, Rick. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, Barry. Have a good night.
Night.